if I told you there's a player who just won their 4th MVP award, averaging 23.4 points and 10.2 rebounds while shooting over 50% from the field? You're probably thinking LeBron, right? Maybe Giannis? Well, plot twist, I'm talking about A'ja Wilson, and the question that's been eating at me for weeks is this. If we dropped her into the NBA right now, who would be her statistical twin? Because here's the thing, and I'll prove this to you in the next 15 minutes, the player Wilson most closely resembles might actually shock you. It's not who you think, and by the end of this video, you'll understand why comparing WNBA and NBA players isn't just possible, it's absolutely fascinating. But first, let me tell you about the domination we just witnessed. A'ja Wilson just did something only 3 other players in WNBA history have accomplished. She won her 4th MVP award. But here's where it gets interesting, and why I stayed up until 2 a.m. crunching these numbers. This wasn't just any MVP season. Wilson averaged 23 points, 10 rebounds, and 2 blocks while shooting 51% from the field. Now, I know what you're thinking. Those are nice numbers, but how do they actually stack up? Well, buckle up, because when you adjust for pace and minutes played, and I'll show you exactly how in just a second, these numbers become absolutely bonkers. But before we dive into the NBA comparison that'll blow your mind, let me ask you this. Have you ever wondered why WNBA players seem to have better shooting percentages than NBA players? It's not what you think, and this little known fact is actually the key to understanding Wilson's true greatness.
It doesn't make you take a back seat, but at the same time, like, you know, you have stars around you, and I think it kind of makes you want to become great like them. Like, I think A'ja is the prime example. Whenever I could have gotten traded, she was always there, you know? And so, like, I think just seeing her, her work ethic and just how much she believes in me and all of our teammates. And so I think just not wanting to let her down, you know, making it a lot harder on her because I knew I was going to be on the floor. So now it's just like, okay, like I can shoot it, I can help space the floor for you, make your job easier.
Right, right.
The WNBA plays 40-minute games compared to the NBA's 48 minutes. Seems simple, right? Wrong. When you factor in pace, how many possessions per game each league averages, something wild happens to these statistics. Wilson's per 36-minute numbers: 31.2 points, 13.8 rebounds, and 2.1 blocks. Now, we're cooking with gas. But here's the kicker that nobody talks about, and this is going to be crucial for our NBA comparison coming up. Wilson did all this while being the primary defensive focus of every single team she faced. Every game plan started with stop A'ja Wilson, and that defensive attention she faced, it's exactly what one NBA superstar deals with night in and night out. But I bet you can't guess who. Alright, let's get nerdy for a hot minute, because this is where it gets really interesting. When most people compare leagues, they just look at raw numbers and call it a day. But that's like comparing apples to, well, slightly smaller apples that play 8 fewer minutes per game. Here's what I did, and yes, I have spreadsheets to prove this, because I'm that person. I took Wilson's 2024 MVP season and adjusted it for NBA pace, NBA minutes, and NBA usage rates. The results? Let's just say there are only 5 active NBA players who match what Wilson accomplished, and one of them is about to retire. Wilson's true shooting percentage this season was 58.7%. For context, that's higher than Giannis Antetokounmpo's career average. Her player efficiency rating, when adjusted for league differences, comes out to roughly 28.5. You know what NBA players had a PER of 28.5 or higher this past season? Exactly 3, and I guarantee you wouldn't have guessed the third one. But here's where Wilson really separates herself and why finding her NBA comparison is so fascinating. Her two-way impact. Speaking of two-way impact, if you're enjoying this deep dive into basketball analytics, smash that subscribe button, because we've got some absolutely wild WNBA content coming your way. Trust me, you don't want to miss what we've got cooking for next week. Wilson led the league in both offensive and defensive win shares. In NBA terms, that's like leading the league in scoring while also being Defensive Player of the Year. It's happened exactly, well, let me put it this way. It's rarer than a unicorn riding another unicorn. And speaking of unicorns, the NBA player Wilson most closely resembles is someone who literally gets called the Greek Freak. But plot twist, it's not Giannis, okay? Here's where I probably lose some of you, but stick with me because this rabbit hole goes deep. My first instinct was Anthony Davis. Similar size, elite shot blocking, can stretch the floor occasionally, but AD's never had Wilson's consistency or durability. Plus, AD's career high in rebounds per game is 11.1. Wilson just averaged 11.9 in fewer minutes. Then I thought Giannis, the dominance, the efficiency, the two-way impact, but Giannis is more of a facilitator, and his shot selection is, let's call it, adventurous some nights. But then I found the perfect match, and it's someone whose name probably hasn't even crossed your mind yet. What about Joel Embiid? Now we're getting warmer. Elite scorer, dominant rebounder, defensive anchor. Embiid's 2022-23 MVP season, the one where he averaged 33.1 points and 10.2 rebounds. That's actually pretty close to Wilson's adjusted numbers. But here's the problem with the Embiid comparison and why I ultimately ruled him out. Availability. Embiid has never played more than 68 games in a season. Wilson, she's missed a total of 6 games in the last 3 seasons combined. So who is it? Who's the NBA player that matches Wilson's combination of scoring, rebounding, efficiency, durability, and two-way dominance? It's Jason Tatum. And before you come for me in the comments, hear me out. I know. Your first reaction is probably Tatum doesn't rebound like Wilson. But remember, we're not just looking at raw numbers. We're looking at impact and role within their respective teams. Tatum's 2024-25 season, 26.8 points, 8.7 rebounds, 6 assists, 1.0 steals, shooting 45.2% from the field. Wilson's 2025 season, 23.4 points, 10.2 rebounds, 3.1 assists, 1.6 steals, shooting 50.5% from the field. But the real similarity isn't in the numbers, it's in something much more subtle that most analysts completely miss. Both players are their team's go-to scorer in clutch situations. Both face constant double teams. Both have evolved their games to become more well-rounded each season. And here's the kicker. Both have that rare ability to take over games without it feeling forced or desperate. You know what I mean? Some players, when they get hot, they start hunting shots and the offense becomes all about them. Tatum and Wilson, they somehow manage to dominate while still making their teammates better. Quick timeout. If you're loving this analysis, hit that like button and let me know in the comments. Who do you think is Aja Wilson's NBA comparison? I'm genuinely curious if anyone saw the Tatum connection coming. But here's where the comparison gets really interesting and why I think it's so perfect. Both players had to overcome the empty stats narrative early in their careers. Remember when people said Tatum was just a scorer on a mediocre team? Same thing happened to Wilson her first few seasons. Now look at them. Wilson's won 2 championships and 4 MVPs. Tatum's got a championship and multiple All-NBA selections. But there's one more layer to this comparison that I haven't mentioned yet, and it's the reason why both players are so incredibly difficult to game plan against. The thing that makes both Wilson and Tatum special isn't just their individual brilliance, it's their basketball IQ and adaptability. Watch Wilson play, and you'll notice something. She never forces it. Bad post position, she'll kick it out. Double team coming, she's already moving to the weak side. It's the same instinctual feel that makes Tatum so dangerous. Both players have that rare ability to read the game in real time and adjust accordingly. Wilson averages fewer turnovers per game, 2.2, than most point guards, despite being the focal point of her team's offense. Tatum's turnover rate has actually decreased each of the last 3 seasons, even as his usage rate has gone up, and there's one specific playstyle that both players have mastered that makes them virtually unguardable, but I bet you've never noticed it. They both excel at what I call countering the counter. You know when you're playing pickup and someone figures out your go-to move so you have to switch it up? Most players have their plan A and maybe a plan B. Wilson and Tatum, they've got the whole alphabet. Wilson shoots 67% at the rim, but she's also shooting 42.4% from three-point range this season. Tatum can post up smaller guards, but he can also step out and drill a contested three over a 7-footer. Both players have eliminated their weaknesses by adding dimensions to their games. Here's the stat that sealed it for me. Both players rank in the top 10 in their respective leagues in points per possession in isolation situations and in post-up situations. That's incredibly rare versatility. By the way, if you're enjoying this deep dive into basketball analytics and player comparisons, make sure you're subscribed because we've got some absolutely mind-blowing content coming up that I genuinely can't wait to share with you. But here's what really makes this comparison fascinating to me and why I think it matters beyond just basketball nerd stuff. Both Wilson and Tatum represent the evolution of their positions. Wilson isn't just a traditional center, she's a basketball player who happens to be 6'4". Same with Tatum, he's not just a small forward, he's a complete player who can guard multiple positions and create offense from anywhere on the court. And this evolution is actually changing how we need to think about basketball comparisons between leagues. But more on that in a second. They're both players who make everyone around them better without sacrificing their own excellence. Wilson's presence opens up the floor for players like Jackie Young.
Let the outside world see. But I think, just we know that she's the star of the team. This is her team, but she takes care of everyone.
Yeah.
No matter if you're a starter, if you aren't getting any minutes, she has her own relationship with each person and makes everyone feel special.
Tatum's versatility allows players like Jaylen Brown and Derek White to play to their strengths. Most importantly, both players have that intangible winner quality. Wilson has 2 championships and 4 MVPs before turning 28. Tatum won his first championship at 24 and seems to be just hitting his prime. The more I think about it, the more convinced I am that if you transplanted Wilson's skill set into the NBA, she'd have a very similar impact to what Tatum brings to the Celtics. Elite scoring, solid rebounding, good defense, and the ability to make the right play in crucial moments. Which brings me to the bigger question that this whole comparison raises. Look, at the end of the day, cross-league comparisons are always going to be imperfect, but that's what makes them so interesting to think about. A'ja Wilson just had one of the most dominant seasons in WNBA history, and when you really break down what she accomplished, it's on par with what we consider elite NBA performance. The Tatum comparison isn't perfect, but it's the closest thing we've got to understanding just how special Wilson's season really was. 4 MVPs, 2 championships, and she's not even in her prime yet. Whether you want to compare her to Tatum, Giannis, or anyone else, the bottom line is this: A'ja Wilson is having one of the great basketball careers of this generation, period. Will all of the gains in women's basketball be set back and even forgotten if they can't settle on a collective bargaining agreement? Click that video right there. Trust me, you'll want to get ahead of this one before everyone else catches on. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.